What up, universe? This is James Patrick at Slam Academy. I'm going to show off one of my favorite tricks of all time using the sampler in Ableton Live. This is a Wavescanning synth. This is essentially a kind of an iteration on a previous tutorial about making a synth out of anything. In this case, I took a snare drum, added some modulation to that snare, made a tiny little loop, and scanned around in the recording, and it ended up sounding like this. So there's obviously quite a bit of coloration going on there, but it all starts with a simple snare drum sound. It's a snare drum, right? We pull this all the way out and play middle C. You can hear it's just a drum loop. So now let's go ahead and put that loop brace on. It's buzzing. Notice I'm playing middle C on my keyboard. It would maybe make sense to go to the global tab over here and turn the voice count down, because we don't really want any harmony in this case. This is going to force it to only play one note at a time. So of course I'd probably knock that down an octave or two. What was I playing? E1? There's my E1. Stuck in that position, and you'll notice if I just grab this loop brace and move it around, I'm able to get to different timbres, because essentially this is my oscillator waveform now. I usually like to start with the play position, like right inside of the loop. That way there won't be any little clicks in front. It'll just sustain like a synth right away. Then now that it's tuned, we can turn on that FM oscillator. You can hear the timbre change a little bit. And this is, of course, the coarse tuning, of course. Unless, of course, you don't have your sample tuned, of course, because then it'll sound like garbage, of course, which could be cool too. But now I'm going to turn on the pitch envelope at an octave. That's kind of fun. And then I'm going to go to my filter and filter that thing. You can see my notch filter, right? That's kind of fun. It's like a little wave park you're at the Wisconsin Dells all of a sudden. Let's put the shaper on, and we'll start with the shaper before the filter. Just a little louder, but when we put the shaper after, it gives us more teeth. That's real nice. Now let's go ahead and add the filter envelope a little bit. This is going to make this cutoff move up and down for a little bit of a snarf. This could be a cool one to loop too if we wanted. I'm going to have to make that decay a little shorter. Yeah. So what loop is doing is it's taking all the time parameters and just multiplying or repeating them over and over. That's fun. Now let's go ahead and turn on that aux envelope, and that's going to make that filter morph. Now you can hear that thing moving around. And essentially it means in 10 milliseconds and then a little bit lower here, it's going to flip through the different modes. Let's play with that. That's tasty. Now let's go ahead and turn on that scanning triangle wave. This is where the real magic happens, the loops start. So now we'll be able to see it surfing around, the play flag that is, in between the start position and the end position. It's a little noisy sounding. We can slow that down. You got to watch out for this. This is trying to go 100% of the way. We can slow it down by decreasing its depth or just slowing the LFO down. Pretty grimy sounding now, eh? We added a touch too much FM over here. We were playing around with that. There, now we're back into tasty land. So, nice and chunky. So now, just to really kick this thing in the butt, let's grab this random LFO. And now this again was just stepping in between random values every bar. But then we turned up this tasty little smooth position and adjusted the phase to make sure that every time a new bar happens from our clip, when we hit play, it's going to morph between different attack times. It's going to morph between different filter cutoffs and different actual filter modes. So we've got that morph getting dinked around by a few different modulators. Let's hit play on this 1-bar clip. I'll maybe shorten this loop up just a tad. I mean, this is a bit of fun, no? I think it could make a lot of sense to just keep that global envelope and trigger And now, as long as the attack is 0 and the release is 0, the decay time becomes the length of the sound. So I can make shorties, or I could increase them. So yeah, this is a tasty set of tricks, no? It's fun to just hit Command T and add a new audio track. Go ahead and maybe capture some of that in a resampling workflow. Resampling here, that'll even include my return tracks or master channel effects, which I have none in this case. And while it's recording even, I could play around with the parameters. And now I've got samples. It would make a lot of sense to maybe boost this up. I could do it manually or just drop it right onto the arrangement view. And hit Command J to normalize it. That's going to involve clicking here and hitting delete. Oops, not on the clip. Click on the volume and hit delete. And now look at that pancake. Ooh! I'd probably come here and maybe just split these up. Command E. And then you could shift click on all of them. Oops, click on one, then shift click to select them all. You could control click and say crop clips. That's going to separate them from each other and create brand new clips that are just those bits. Yumbo, look at that wave shape. Now the real pro ninja move would probably be to open my user library. Maybe go into my samples folder, you know, make a little folder here. Can control click here and make a new folder. I can call these Wavescan snare bass. Maybe just control click on one of these sounds and say show in Finder. Of course, I could just grab the very clip and drag it in, but you'll notice that's going to save the ALC file, the Ableton Live clip, which is not really what I'm trying to do. So I'm going to hit escape and go back to that Wavescan snare bass. Let's control click and say show in Finder. And now you'll see that I've got all my sounds right here. This is kind of another tutorial I've made in the past called the fish tank method you should check out. But I've got all my sounds and these little metadata AST files, which I want to separate from the list. So I can click on kind here. If I don't see kind, I can right click and show kind. That kind. And I can shift click on those guys to select them all, and they're named 2-1 audio, which is totally ghetto. I should have probably named the clip with Command R before cropping them, but I didn't. Luckily with OS X, I can control click and I can rename. This will bring up a little window. It'll default to replace text, but I'm just going to format the text. What do we call these? FM, no, Wavescan, snare bass, 1 bar, E. This was a E1. Got to put the pitch in there, duh. And then start at 1 and rename. Now look at that. Boop. Nice. Now I grab those, drop them in here, and I'm winning at life. This is a little drum loop. I just took a snare, made the loop really tiny by putting it into sustain mode. And then I adjusted the loop brace to get into the right pitch range and the right timbre. Once I did that, I took a tuner and just held a note and adjusted the tuning with the root note and the detuning so my tuner would show the right note I'm playing on the keys. That forces it to not only harmonize nicely with other instruments, or not nicely, but also when we go to the next tab over and we employ the FM oscillator here, this is going to add frequency modulation from a sine wave at a pretty high frequency, not crazy, but high enough, just to give it some timbre teeth. Not only that, but the coarse tuning is now going to be perfectly in sync with my keyboard because I tuned the sample correctly in the first place. In addition to that, I pop on a little octave pitch envelope for a little kind of descending energy. That's pretty fun. And then what I do after that is I'll put a filter on there, a nice low-pass filter at first, and adjust it to taste, and then I flip it into morphing mode. Morphing mode will allow me to not only envelope the filter cutoff, which makes this thing move left and right, but in addition to that, it allows me to modulate with the aux envelope the filter morph. I set it at about 80% of the way because 100% is like high pass, and I don't really want it to fully high pass, more just like band pass, notch, etc. So I did also loop that envelope because I thought it would be a tasty thing to kind of occasionally get some wiggles out of. Then I also use a triangle wave LFO that's being re-triggered nice and slow. This is what's evoking the Wavescan. So by having this guy on, you can see one more time, notice that it doesn't just loop in the loop brace, it scans in between the play flag and the end flag. You can adjust that to taste. You want it to go further, shorter. So that modulation tab playing a pretty big role in this whole thing. But in addition to that, I really wanted to modulate my envelope itself. Maybe like the envelope amount, or in this case, I did the attack time. So this is going to change the way the filter morphs. And this is a random LFO. And I actually clock synced it to 1 bar because my MIDI clip up here is just a 1 bar long sequence. It's just sustaining a low note, low E, nice kind of pitch for a bass sound. And in addition to this random 1 bar envelope or LFO that's got some smoothing on it, so it's not just stepping, but it's morphing in between the shapes, I hit this little list button, and this allows me to modulate the attack, the filter cutoff, and the filter morph all with that same shape. This is tasty. Notice I also have a shaper in here. The shaper is a distortion circuit, of course. I've got it driving pretty hard. And the secret here is to not have it in its default setting where the shaper is going into the filter, but put the shaper after. So this would be a really fun technique if you were trying to, I don't know, scare people, or just drop something into a sampler to have a new sound, or maybe just throw it right onto a track in one of your compositions for a really cool kind of bass wiggle. So this has been your host, James Patrick, Wavescanning synthesis, right inside of the Ableton sampler. I look forward to working with you soon. Check us out, www.slamacademy.com. The best place to learn advanced sound design anywhere. All right, peace. We love masterclass, YouTube tutorials, and everything in between. But Slam Academy is doing something entirely different. With partnerships in the latest interactive online technologies, the virtual classroom experience at Slam Academy is always immersive and engaging. In class, you will share full resolution line-level audio with your instructor in real time, so it feels like you're right there in the studio. There are no vague, poorly described ideas here. Only specialized lessons designed by Ableton certified trainers where you work directly with experts as they help you sculpt your tracks and create your own sound.
Slam Academy is an Ableton certified training center offering courses in sound design, mixing and mastering, and more. www.slamacademy.com